following are questions offered by students and devotees. How can you be sure that you haven't been brainwashed or controlled or under a spell on this path?
Well, to the person who's asking this question, the first thing I would say is that we have a video at the top of our homepage at Nityananda Shaktipat that really answers this question in great detail. We don't practice dogma here. We practice what's known as Siddha science. And the root of that is always the same. My own guru said independence of will and judgment allows one to stand upright like God. And so what that means, and the way he phrased it is really wonderful, but what that means is that we emphasize, we support people using their own critical thinking and making decisions here. We practice Siddha science. This is the science of the self-realized love beings, and we have a very long, unbroken lineage where our approach has been handed down from master to disciple, from master to devotee, in an unbroken lineage since the pre-Bronze Age. And it is science in that we always start with, there's the wisdom of the great sages of our lineage, of which I just repeat what they say because of my experience of those understandings and how beneficial they are for sadhana. And so whenever there's an utterance here, whenever we teach a method, whenever we provide a means that people should apply and practice to their lives, we always tell people the same thing, that you begin as a scientist would in a laboratory, that whatever wisdom you're imparted, that you first treat it like a hypothesis, that you attempt to disprove it first. Like, for example, everything that takes place inside of your own being. It is an utterance of many of the siddhas of our lineage, and it's something that I repeat to people here because it's the truth from my own experience and the experience of many, many other beings. And so if you take that point of wisdom, and it's a great point of wisdom, it points to the truth that everything we experience within our own being, that we compel people here to treat that as a hypothesis, which means the first step in true science is that you attempt to disprove the hypothesis. In this case, can you disprove that everything you experience is taking place within your own being? And then if you can't disprove it over time by making attempts, then true science in any field says the same thing, that if you can't disprove a hypothesis, then you have to accept one of two things, either that it's absolutely true or that there's a high possibility that it could be true. And then the next step in either of those cases, if you cannot disprove, is then to use methods to attempt to actually prove that the utterance in this case is true, that everything you experience within your own being. That's science. And that's what we do here. So we provide people with time-honored methods for applying all of the practices, all of the points of wisdom. I tell people talk is cheap, and many people here have heard me say this over and over again, that the only way that you can know whether or not what Kedarji is saying is true and is beneficial is to take what's being said and apply it on your spiritual journey, in sadhana, in your daily mundane life, and then record. This is the other important part, because you can't test anything unless you're going to record the result to know whether it's actually true or not. And here we do that by way of journaling, where we encourage everyone to keep a journal, so that as you begin to have experiences that would support wisdom imparted here, practices, the methods being true and beneficial, that you're recording that, just like a lab technician would, so that you can go back and see that in fact you have evidence that what you're being taught here is actually beneficial, is actually true from the point of your own experience. We have a saying here that teachings can be argued, what's elucidated in sacred text and scriptures can be skewed, people can reinterpret those things, but you cannot argue with experience. And so that's always the bottom line with respect to how people are led here. And so that's what happens here. So there really is, in our approach, no possibility of people being forced to think in a certain way. There's no way that people are forced to accept a particular teaching or a method until they have demonstrated to themselves that it's actually beneficial and that it actually works. So people don't have to just take my word for it, because that would be dogma. Here, everything is based on experience, and people have experiences. And the people who are in our Sangam now have had a good deal of time, because you need some time, right? It takes time to perform these tests. It takes time. You have to come, spend some time, apply the methods that you're being taught, apply the wisdom that's being shared with you, and then take time to really apply it in the laboratory of your own existence over a period of time. Just like, if a pharmaceutical company wants to bring a new medication to market, the average period for testing before they can even go to apply to bring it to market is 5 to 8 years. So we're talking about time. Similarly here, we encourage people to give some time to what's being taught so that they can determine for themselves, using their own independence of will and judgment and their own critical thinking, by way of comparing. Actually, we have a phrase here, the risk ratio test, because we know, particularly in the early stages of following the spiritual leadership here, of performing sadhana, in the early stages, people are going to practice a little and then not practice, attempt to apply methods and then not do it. People are taking, one step forward, 4 steps back, so to speak, and that's typical. So we tell people, well, compare how you feel and what your experience is when you're not applying the wisdom, the teachings, the methods. Compare that to what your experience is when you do, and then decide which has the greater benefit. And that's the way we approach everything here. So there's never is there a situation where I or any of the teaching staff or in any way is it conveyed that people should simply do what's being instructed just because they're told to do it. There's a lot of emphasis and a lot of evidence provided for why these practices are efficacious, for why people should follow the wisdom, but then it's based on your applying, testing, and experiencing for yourself. That's always the way to do it. Independence of will and judgment alone allow one to stand upright like God. And then just like in any other field, and so I was talking about the medical field and testing for medications, and so we have things like penicillin, for example. So penicillin was tested over a period of many, many, many years. And so you do get to the point, as in this example, where people don't question the effectiveness of penicillin anymore. They have enough, doctors have enough documentation, labs have enough documentation that there's no reason to exercise a doubt about the efficacy of penicillin, because it's been tested so much, it's been used so much. So after a certain point, there's no reason to question that penicillin works as an antibiotic, right? So in the same way, here in our approach, there does come a point where, based on the individual's experience and then the collective experience of people who are using the same methods, applying the same wisdom, and then reading the utterance of great sages of steady wisdom in our lineage, share their experiences of applying the same methods and the same wisdom, we're talking about a long time. So there does come a point after which you have enough experience that you can now say, well, there's no reason for me to continue to question this anymore, because it's been tested and tested and tested My experiences are growing as a result of application. Other people have tested it. I'm reading about great saints who've had these experiences by applying the same method. Just like that penicillin, there's no reason for anyone to doubt anymore that penicillin does not work when it's applied properly as an antibiotic, because it's been tested so much and there's so much documentation on it. And it's the same here. But you do reach that point where now you can stop questioning and really dive in deep and apply based on your own growing experience, and then the experience continues to grow.
Nam